The void between stars held secrets, but none quite like the HSS Phantom. Against the backdrop of infinite darkness, the experimental human vessel slipped through space like a whisper, its quantum-dampened hull absorbing every trace of radiation that touched it. On the bridge, Captain Sarah Chen stood with her hands clasped behind her back, dark eyes fixed on the main display, showing the approaching Zarkax border defense network. Stealth systems holding at optimal levels. Lieutenant James Cooper reported from his station, fingers dancing across holographic controls. "We're completely dark, Captain. As far as their sensors are concerned, we're just another piece of cosmic background radiation." Sarah nodded, her expression remaining neutral despite the pride swelling in her chest. The Phantom represented humanity's greatest technological achievement, not because it was the most powerful or the fastest, but because it was built on understanding rather than brute force. While the Zarkax Empire focused on building bigger weapons and stronger shields, humanity had learned to become invisible. "Time to defense grid perimeter?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the tension humming through the bridge. 3 minutes, Captain," Navigator Maya Patul responded, her hands hovering over the navigation interface. "Their patrol routes are exactly as intelligence predicted. We have a clear path through their primary sensor net." Dr. Marcus Rivera spoke up from his station, where complex data streams reflected off his glasses. "Captain, I'm picking up some interesting patterns in their communication traffic. They're celebrating something." The AI specialist's brow furrowed as he analyzed the intercepted signals. "It looks like they're preparing for some kind of announcement." Sarah moved to his station, studying the data scrolling across his screen. 6 months of preparation had led to this moment. The Phantom wasn't just a stealth ship, it was humanity's first real chance to understand their supposed superiors. The Zarkax Empire had emerged from deep space 3 years ago, presenting themselves as benevolent advanced beings willing to guide humanity's development. But something about their story had never quite added up. "Begin recording everything," Sarah ordered. "Every transmission, every power fluctuation, every..." The words died in her throat as new data flashed across the main display. The Zarkax announcement was beginning, broadcasting across their entire empire. But instead of the expected diplomatic pleasantries, the words that scrolled across the screen sent ice through Sarah's veins. "The Human Integration Initiative will commence within the solar cycle," Dr. Rivera translated, his voice tight. "All military assets are to prepare for immediate deployment. Resistance is expected to be minimal. Human technological development remains precisely within predicted parameters." He looked up, face pale. "Captain, this is the invasion plan. They're not here to guide us. They're here to enslave us." Sarah's hands gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white. The Phantom's mission had been reconnaissance, a careful probe to understand their mysterious neighbors. Instead, they'd stumbled upon the proof of humanity's greatest fears. "How long until they detect us?" she asked, mind already racing through possibilities. "They won't," Cooper replied with quiet confidence. "The stealth system is holding perfectly. We could park in their capital's orbit, and they wouldn't know we're there." A plan began forming in Sarah's mind. The Zarkax Empire had built their power on careful information control, presenting themselves as unstoppable, all-knowing beings to every species they encountered. But the Phantom represented something they'd never faced before, a complete blind spot in their perfect system. "Dr. Rivera, how deeply can you penetrate their networks without being detected?" The AI specialist's fingers were already moving. "With our current position, I can access about 30% of their civilian infrastructure. Give me time and a closer approach, I could reach much deeper." Sarah straightened. Decision made. The Phantom had been meant to gather intelligence and return home, but they now held something far more valuable than simple military data. They had the truth, and truth, she knew, could be more devastating than any weapon. "Navigator Patel, plot us a course deeper into their territory." "Lieutenant Cooper, maintain stealth protocols but begin preparing our communication arrays." Dr. Rivera, She turned to the AI specialist. "How do you feel about starting a revolution?" The bridge crew stared at her for a moment before understanding dawned in their eyes. The Zarkax Empire had never faced humanity's true strength. They measured power in weapons and shields, in fleets and armies. They had no defense against ideas, against the truth itself spreading through their carefully controlled information networks. "They expect us to be primitive," Sarah continued, allowing herself a small smile. "They expect us to fight with ships and guns when they come for Earth. Instead, we're going to show them humanity's real power, our ability to question, to doubt, to recognize truth from lies. By the time they realize what's happening, their own people will be doing our work for us." The Phantom slipped deeper into Zarkax space, invisible and silent. But it carried something far more dangerous than weapons. It carried a spark of revolution, ready to ignite in an empire built on deception. The human ship might have been a ghost, but it was about to become the Empire's worst nightmare. Far ahead, the lights of the Zarkax core world sparkled like jewels, unaware that their perfect order was about to face its greatest test. And in the darkness between those stars, humanity's ghost ship carried truth through the void, preparing to unleash a force that no empire, no matter how mighty, had ever truly managed to defeat. The Phantom drifted in high orbit above Zarkax Prime, the Empire's crown jewel, its presence as undetectable as a shadow in the dark. Inside the ship's cyber warfare center, Dr. Marcus Rivera's fingers flew across multiple holographic interfaces while streams of alien code reflected in his glasses. Around him, the air hummed with the sound of quantum processors working at full capacity. "Their network architecture is fascinating," he murmured, more to himself than to Captain Chen, who stood watching over his shoulder. "They built everything on absolute control. Every piece of information, every transmission, every data packet is tracked and monitored. It's perfect, which makes it perfectly vulnerable." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Vulnerable how?" Marcus gestured at his main screen, where a complex diagram of Zarkax information networks spread like a glowing web. "They're so focused on controlling authorized information that they never considered what would happen if someone could inject unauthorized data directly into their system. There are no internal firewalls, no isolation protocols. Why would there be? They believed their outer defenses were impenetrable. Their first mistake was thinking perfect control was possible," Lieutenant Cooper added from his security station. "Their second was advertising that perfection to everyone they conquered." The past week had revealed surprising truths about the Zarkax Empire. Behind their facade of unstoppable technological superiority lay a society rigidly structured around information control. Every citizen received carefully curated news, entertainment, and historical records. Any data that contradicted the Empire's official narrative was immediately deleted and its source eliminated. "I found something interesting," Maya called from her station, where she'd been analyzing cultural data. "Their lower-ranking military officers are starting to question things. There are encrypted messages being passed between ship commanders, expressing doubts about the human invasion plans. They've seen our defensive capabilities firsthand during border skirmishes, and the numbers don't match what their high command is telling them." Sarah smiled. Cracks were already forming in the Empire's perfect image. "Dr. Rivera, how soon can we begin transmission?" Marcus made a few final adjustments to his code. "The infiltration program is ready. I've designed it to mimic their official emergency broadcast protocols. Once it starts, they won't be able to shut it down without crippling their entire communication network." He paused, looking up at Sarah. "But Captain, there's something else you should see." He pulled up another data stream, this one showing internal security communications from the Imperial Palace. The Empire isn't as unified as they want everyone to believe. There's an entire opposition movement operating in secret, led by members of their own scientific community. They've been gathering evidence of the military leadership's deceptions for years, but they have no way to distribute it. Until now, Sarah finished, understanding dawning in her eyes. The Phantom hadn't just found a way to attack the Empire. They'd discovered potential allies. "Begin the transmission," she ordered. "But first, make contact with the opposition. Let's give them everything we found about the invasion plans. It's time to turn their perfect system against them." Marcus nodded and initiated the sequence. Across the Zarkax Empire, screens flickered and changed. The usual stream of carefully controlled information was replaced by something unprecedented. The truth, evidence of military deceptions, proof of falsified technological superiority, and most devastatingly, the Empire's own internal documents revealing their true nature. "They're trying to block the transmission," Cooper reported, monitoring the Empire's response. "But they can't. Every time they shut down one channel, we're opening 3 more. Their own emergency protocols are working against them." The response was immediate and dramatic. In the capital city below, crowds began gathering in the streets. Military vessels in orbit suddenly stopped responding to Central Command. The perfect order of the Zarkax Empire began to show its first real cracks. "New transmission intercepted," Maya announced, her voice tight with excitement. "The opposition is broadcasting their own evidence now, confirming everything we're showing. They're calling for immediate governmental reform." Sarah watched the chaos unfold on their monitors, but her expression remained focused. This was only the beginning. "Dr. Rivera, begin Phase 2. It's time to show them exactly what human AI systems can do." Marcus grinned and activated his secondary program. Across the Empire, every piece of propaganda, every falsified historical record, every manufactured piece of evidence of Zarkax superiority began to decrypt itself, revealing the truth beneath the lies. The Empire had spent centuries building their society on a foundation of absolute control and perfect information management. Now that foundation was crumbling. "Multiple destroyer-class vessels breaking formation," Cooper reported. They're powering down their weapons. 3 fleet commanders have just announced they won't participate in the planned invasion of Earth. The bridge crew watched as the mighty Zarkax military machine began to splinter, not from human weapons or traditional warfare, but from something far more powerful, the simple spread of truth through their own networks. "Message coming in from the opposition leadership," Maya announced. "They're requesting direct communication. They say they've been waiting centuries for this moment." Sarah straightened her uniform and nodded. "Put them through to my ready room. It's time to show the Zarkax Empire that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our ability to recognize and embrace truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be." As she walked to her ready room, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Phantom had been designed to be invisible, but its impact would be impossible to ignore. The revolution had begun, not with plasma cannons or kinetic strikes, but with the simple act of letting people see the truth they'd been denied for so long. The halls of the Zarkax Imperial Archive had never seen such chaos. Centuries of carefully curated history were unraveling as citizens accessed previously hidden records through their data terminals. The Phantom's digital assault had not just exposed current military plans, it had cracked open the Empire's entire historical database. "They're beginning to understand," Dr. Rivera reported, monitoring the surge of civilian communications from his station. "The Zarkax people are learning that they weren't always an empire. They were refugees once, fleeing a dying star system. Their supposed technological superiority, it came from reverse engineering abandoned alien technology they found. Everything they've been taught about their inherent superiority was manufactured." Captain Chen watched the real-time feeds showing crowds gathering in every major city across Zarkax space. "How are the military commanders responding?" "That's the interesting part," Lieutenant Cooper interjected, pulling up a tactical display. "The fleet is fragmenting into 3 distinct factions: hardliners who want to crush the protests, reformers who are joining the opposition, and a growing number who are simply standing down, refusing to take action either way." The Phantom had maintained its position above the capital, still undetected despite the chaos unfolding below. Sarah had chosen this location carefully. close enough to maintain control of their information warfare campaign, but positioned to make a quick escape if necessary. New development, Maya called out, her voice urgent. The Science Council is making a public broadcast. They're confirming everything we've revealed. They're providing additional proof that the military leadership has been lying about human technological capabilities. On the main screen, an elderly Zarkak scientist stood before a massive crowd. His scales, normally a uniform gray, showed stress patterns of deep blue as he spoke. "Our people deserve to know the truth," he declared, his voice trembling but determined. "Humans are not primitive beings to be conquered. They achieved in decades what took us centuries. Their technology developed naturally, through innovation and creativity, while we built our society on stolen knowledge we never truly understood." Sarah felt a fierce pride at these words. The Zarkak's empire had believed humanity's rapid technological advancement was impossible, that it had to be a lie or a trick. They couldn't comprehend that human innovation, unburdened by rigid control and artificial hierarchies, could achieve so much so quickly. "Multiple secure channels activating," Dr. Rivera announced suddenly. "The opposition network is larger than we thought. Scientists, educators, cultural preservationists, they're all coming forward now, sharing centuries of suppressed knowledge." The revolution was taking on a life of its own. The Phantom's initial data breach had been the spark, but the Zarkak's people themselves were now fueling the fire of change. Centuries of rigid control were dissolving in a matter of days. "Incoming transmission," Cooper reported. "High priority, heavily encrypted. It's from the Imperial Military Academy." Sarah nodded. "Put it through." The face that appeared on the screen belonged to a young Zarkak's officer, her scales showing the distinctive patterns of the elite command track. "This is Commandant Vexera of the Imperial Academy. I know you're out there, human vessel. Your presence is still undetected, but we've analyzed the pattern of information dispersion. Only a ship in high orbit could have achieved this level of network penetration." Sarah exchanged glances with her crew before responding. "This is Captain Chen of the HSS Phantom. What do you want, Commandant?" "To thank you," Vexera replied, causing surprised murmurs on the bridge. "For centuries, we've trained our officers to believe in absolute superiority, to never question, to never doubt. But true military strength comes from understanding both yourself and your opponent. You've shown us that we've forgotten this basic truth." The commandant's image was replaced by a tactical display showing the position of every major military vessel in the sector. "Half of my senior class has joined the reformers. The other half is actively debating the ethics of invasion rather than blindly accepting orders. You've accomplished something remarkable, Captain. You've taught an empire of warriors the power of doubt." "Incoming emergency broadcast," Maya interrupted. "The Imperial High Command is ordering all loyal forces to converge on the capital. They're threatening to bombard civilian centers if the protests don't stop immediately." Sarah's expression hardened. The old guard was making its move, desperate to maintain control through brute force. But they had forgotten something crucial about information. Once released, it couldn't be contained by threats or violence. "Dr. Rivera, broadcast everything we have about the High Command's personal corruption. Lieutenant Cooper, transmit tactical data to all reformed military vessels." "Commandant," she turned back to the screen. "I believe your students are about to get a practical lesson in choosing between duty and justice." The revolution had entered its most dangerous phase. But as Sarah watched more and more military ships break formation and move to protect civilian populations, she knew humanity had already achieved its greatest victory. They had shown the Zarkak's people something their empire had never prepared them for: the power of making their own choices based on truth rather than command. "Multiple planetary defense grids powering down," Cooper reported with growing excitement. "Local garrison commanders are refusing to fire on their own people. The High Command's authority is collapsing." The Phantom maintained its silent watch above the capital as history unfolded below. The mighty Zarkak's empire wasn't being defeated by human weapons or military might. It was being transformed by something far more powerful, the awakening of its own people to the possibility of change. The Zarkak's capital world burned, not with weapons fire, but with the light of countless protest beacons. From the Phantom's observation position, the planet's night side glowed with unprecedented activity as millions of citizens took to the streets, their personal devices broadcasting truth across every available frequency. High Command is making their final move, Lieutenant Cooper reported, his voice tense as he monitored military movements. They've activated their elite guard ships. 5 dreadnoughts, fully crewed with hardline loyalists, moving to orbital positions. Captain Chen studied the tactical display, watching as the massive warships took up attack positions around the capital. The old guard was done with subtlety. They meant to terrorize their population back into submission through a show of overwhelming force. Message from Commandant Vexra, Maya announced. Academy ships are moving to intercept, but they're outnumbered. She's requesting tactical advice. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Even now, facing civil war, the Zarkak's military mind couldn't quite grasp that victory wasn't always about superior firepower. Dr. Rivera, what's the status of their command and control systems? Marcus's fingers danced across his console. The dreadnoughts are operating on isolated networks. They learned that much from our earlier attacks. But their crews, he paused, a glint of excitement in his eyes. Their crews are still receiving personal data feeds. They haven't cut off their soldiers from the general information network. Because they can't, Sarah realized. Those crews have families on the surface. Cut them off completely, and they might start questioning orders. The High Command is caught in their own trap. They need control, but perfect control is impossible now. Multiple impacts on the planetary surface, Cooper reported suddenly. The dreadnoughts are targeting communication hubs. Minimal casualties, but they're trying to shut down the flow of information. Sarah's expression hardened. The High Command had just made their fatal mistake. Dr. Rivera, implement Protocol Omega. Lieutenant Cooper, prepare to drop our cloak. Maya, plot us a course directly between the dreadnoughts and the planet. Her crew stared at her for a moment before understanding dawned in their eyes. They had spent weeks being invisible, using the Phantom's stealth capabilities to wage their shadow war. Now it was time to show the Zarkak's empire exactly what humanity could do. Broadcasting on all frequencies, Marcus announced, initiating the protocol. Across the Zarkak's fleet, every screen, every communication device, every data feed suddenly displayed the same image. The Phantom, appearing as if from nowhere in high orbit. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force, she broadcast, her voice carrying to every ship and every surface receiver. You've been told that humans are primitive, that we could never match Zarkak's technology. Your leaders were wrong. We didn't build the Phantom to fight you. We built it to show you the truth. The massive ship shimmered as its stealth systems deactivated, revealing its true form. Not the crude vessel the Zarkaks had expected, but a masterpiece of human engineering. Its hull gleamed with quantum phase materials that defied their sensors. Its engines operated on principles their scientists had never imagined. Your empire was built on control, Sarah continued, on the belief that perfect order could be maintained through force and fear. But look around you. Look at your own people. They're not fighting against you. They're fighting for the right to think for themselves, to question, to grow. These are the qualities that let humanity advance so quickly, and they're qualities your people share. On the surface below, the protests grew larger as citizens watched the human ship reveal itself. The dreadnoughts hung motionless, their crews suddenly uncertain as they faced something that challenged everything they'd been taught about human capabilities. We're receiving transmissions from within the dreadnoughts, Maya reported, her voice filled with wonder. Crew members are asking questions. They're demanding answers from their commanders. Some are refusing to fire on the surface targets. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, Cooper called out. It's the reformed fleet. They're taking up defensive positions around the civilian centers. The balance of power had shifted. The High Command's perfect military machine was fracturing as individual soldiers and officers faced a choice: continue believing in a system of control that had been proven false, or embrace the uncertainty and potential of freedom. Message from the Science Council, Marcus reported. They're declaring an emergency session. They're calling for immediate democratic reforms and open contact with Earth. Sarah watched as more and more military ships broke formation, moving to join the reformers. The revolution wasn't being won through violence or military might. It was being won through the simple, unstoppable power of people choosing to think for themselves. The High Command dreadnoughts are powering down their weapons, Cooper announced, relief evident in his voice. They're requesting terms of surrender. No, Sarah corrected him. They're requesting dialogue. And that's something humanity is very good at. She turned to her crew, seeing the pride in their eyes. Send word to Earth. Tell them the Zarkax Empire is ready to talk, not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals who have finally learned to question, to doubt, and to grow. The Phantom hung in orbit, no longer hidden but now a symbol of something the Zarkax Empire had never expected: the power of human innovation and the strength that comes not from control, but from the courage to embrace change. 1 month after the Phantom revealed itself to the Zarkax Empire, the Grand Chamber of the Imperial Palace hosted an unprecedented gathering. Captain Sarah Chen stood before the newly formed Transitional Council, her dark uniform a stark contrast to the ornate surroundings. The chamber, once reserved for imperial decrees, now hummed with open debate and discussion. The transition hasn't been entirely smooth, Commandant Vexrort reported to the assembled representatives. Her scales now showed the deep green of satisfaction, rather than the stress blue of previous weeks. But the military reforms are proceeding faster than expected. Our officers are learning to encourage questioning rather than blind obedience. It's refreshing. Dr. Marcus Rivera, seated beside Captain Chen, monitored the ongoing data streams on his tablet. The Phantom's revolutionary broadcast had evolved into something larger, a complete transformation of how information flowed through Zarkax society. The educational networks are being completely rebuilt, he added. They're incorporating Earth's open-source principles. Knowledge is being shared rather than controlled. Sarah watched as various faction leaders debated the path forward. The High Command loyalists had been ousted, but more importantly, the system that created them was being dismantled. The Zarkax were learning that strength came from diversity of thought, not uniformity of belief. There are still challenges, Maya noted from her position near the chamber's communication hub. Some outer colonies are resistant to change. They've known only the old ways for generations. Change takes time, Sarah responded, remembering her own world's history. The important thing is that they now have the freedom to choose their path forward. The chamber's main display activated, showing a real-time view of the space around the capital world. Where once there had been only military vessels, now ships of all kinds moved freely. Science vessels, merchant craft, and even the first diplomatic ships from Earth were arriving, bringing with them new ideas and opportunities for cooperation. Captain Chen called out Council Leader Texar, once a hidden member of the scientific opposition, and now the head of the transitional government. Earth's diplomatic courts has made an interesting proposal. They suggest establishing a joint technological research initiative, not to advance weapons or defense systems, but to solve problems that affect both our peoples. Sarah stepped forward, addressing the council. Humanity's greatest strength has never been our weapons or our stealth ships. It's our ability to face challenges together, to share ideas freely, to learn from each other's successes and failures. The Phantom didn't win through superior firepower. It won by showing your people the power of unrestricted truth and free thought. The council chamber erupted in discussion. The concept of collaborative research, of sharing knowledge freely between species, would have been unthinkable under the old regime. But the Zarkax were learning quickly that innovation flourished in freedom. We're detecting something interesting in the colonial data networks, Marcus reported quietly to Sarah. The stories are spreading, not just about the revolution, but about how it happened. They're calling it the silent strike, the day humanity conquered an empire without firing a shot. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Not conquered, awakened. There's a difference. Lieutenant Cooper, monitoring security from his position near the chamber entrance, suddenly straightened. Captain, long-range sensors are picking up something at the edge of the system. It's another species ship. They're requesting contact. The chamber fell silent as the implications stank in. Under the old empire, any unauthorized contact would have been met with immediate military response. Now, they faced a choice: retreat behind their old fears or embrace the uncertainty of new connections. Council leader Texar stood, his scales shifting to the pattern of formal decision-making. Captain Chen, would you and your crew be willing to assist us in this first contact? We find ourselves in need of expertise in open dialogue.